Welcome to the fish filleting and cooking station. I'm Judd Krautzer. I'm a fisheries biologist with the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department, and I'm going to show you how to fillet your fish so you can get it ready to eat. One of the benefits of ice fishing as a pastime is that you might get to come home with fish that you can eat. And fish, especially local fish from right here in Vermont, are a great source of food for a couple of reasons. First of all, they're local. They're right here in Vermont. We don't need extra fossil fuels to get them here. They are free range and organic. They're just growing out there in the wild, no needed fertilizers or antibiotics. They just take care of themselves. They're also nutritious. They're a great source of protein and omega-3 fatty acids, and they taste great. So they check all the boxes for a great food source. One of the challenges is when you buy fish at the store, it's already filleted, but when you catch your own fish, you have to do it yourself. And it's something that you can learn to do. It will take some practice to get good at it, but if you spend some time on it, you'll be able to fillet your fish pretty quickly, get the bones out of it, and have it ready to eat. I'm going to show you how to fillet two different fish, and I'm going to use two different methods. And these methods will work for pretty much every fish that you'll catch. The bone structure in different species can be different. For example, pike and pickerel have some extra bones in them, so that's a little bit different technique. But what I'm going to show you will work on most fish that you'll catch. So first I'm going to do a crappie, and I'm going to use just a traditional fillet knife. It doesn't have to be this long for a fish like a crappie, but you want a really sharp knife that is kind of flexible. And so what we're going to start out with, we're going to make a cut right down behind the head, and we're going to hit bone, and you can feel the bone there. And then I just turn the knife sideways, and then I run it. I'm just running right down the back of the fish. I just want to make a little slit in the skin. Okay, then I'm going to come back in and go deeper. I'm trying to keep my knife parallel to the table, and I can feel the ribs, and I'll show you those ribs after I get those apart, but I can feel the ribs of the fish in there. I don't want to cut through them necessarily. If you do, it's not that big of a deal. But you'll come to the end of the ribs and you won't feel them anymore, and at that point you can just push your knife right through and it'll come out the bottom there. And then you just take your knife and run it just parallel right back there. I like to leave the skin attached at the tail, and you'll see why in a bit. So now you can get in here and this meat will start to come off, and then I'm just going to work up over the ribs just a little bit until I can get my knife through. And now I'm cutting through the skin right above the ribs, and then when I get to the back of the ribs, I'm going to slice right down again. and there we have our fillet off. So the ribs are right in here, so all of the organs are inside of this. So, and there are bones. The back bone runs right here, so this is something we're just trying to cut right along the top of it. There are bones coming up like this, down like this, so we're just trying to get the meat off of all these bones. And this is why I left the skin attached back here, because now I'm just going to get my knife and I'm going to get under the meat, but I want to go between the meat and the skin, and I'm just cutting the meat off of the skin. All right, so there's the skin, there's our meat. You can take that, put it in some water, and then you'll rinse that. I usually let it soak in salt water overnight before I cook it, but you don't have to do that. That helps to get some of the blood and stuff off of it. And then we'll just do the other side the same way. Again, we start in right behind the head, just come right down. turn the knife sideways and run right along the back. Then we come back in and just get through the meat until we can feel the ribs, or you feel them and hear them. When I get to the back of the ribs, I just slide my knife the rest of the way through and then just cut right to the back. Then we just get this in here, pick the meat up, and then we're just cutting the skin right above the ribs. When we get to the back of the ribs, we just make a cut down. Oh. And so there I cut through the ribs a little bit, but that's not too big of a problem. And then we'll just flip it over and get our knife in between the skin and the meat again. And just slide that knife right in between the meat and skin. And we have another skinless fillet. I would check that just to make sure there's no bones in there where I cut through the ribs. I think it looks okay. But that should be pretty good to eat after you rinse it. You can really see the bones, the backbone running here. You've got bones coming up, bones coming down, and then this is the ribs here. So we're just trying to get all the meat away from those bones. All right. So now we'll do a yellow perch, and I'm going to use an electric fillet knife. These can be really handy for filleting fish really quickly. These are a good way to start. They don't cost as much as an electric knife, but the challenge with these is you have to keep them sharp. With an electric knife, you don't have to worry about keeping these things sharp. Eventually you'll need to replace the blade, but they can go through a lot of bones and a lot of fish before you need to worry about that. All right, so we're going to do a yellow perch this time, and I'm going to do it a little bit differently with this knife. The first part's the same. I'm going to go straight down until I hit the backbone, but now I'm going to turn the knife sideways, and you can see I've got it all the way through, so I'm cutting through the ribs this time. And I'm just going all the way back towards the tail and leaving that attached again. And now you can see how I cut through the ribs. So all those ribs are there. The organs of the fish are still in there. I don't like to cut through the ribs with this type of knife because it dulls the knife quicker, but it's not as big of an issue with the electric knife. But next I'm going to just separate. I'm going to separate the meat from the skin like I did with that knife again, just getting it in between the meat and the skin. This fish is a little frozen, so it's not going to work quite as easily. All right, so I think I got most of the skin off there. Now I'm going to take my knife and I'm just going to cut these ribs out. And I'm just going to go down and cut around these ribs. And so there's our fillet. And again, just like with the crappie, we can see the backbone, the bones here, and now instead of having the ribs still attached, we've got them with our skin right now. And we can just take that fillet and throw it in our bowl, and we'll do the other side. Again, we cut in just behind the head. Get the knife sideways, parallel to the table, and just run it right out towards the tail. And now we can just get in between the skin and meat. And then we just cut the ribs out. There's our boneless, skinless fillet, and what's left. With some practice, that you can get pretty quick at that and fillet these fish fairly quickly, have them ready for a delicious meal with you and your family and your friends. So thank you, and hope you get to enjoy ice fishing and enjoy eating some of the fish that you get to bring home.